And here we go. It is time to talk about Studio Series 88, I think. Yes, 88. Studio Series 88 Sideways. Now, for anyone keeping score, I do still have the Astrid scar, so that's what that's from. Both of us are fine. It's just a line that's on my wrist. But yes, Studio Series Sideways. This is a thing. So my history and interest in Sideways, like specifically the live action movie Sideways, is a little weird. Basically, I used to have the Revenge of the Fallen deluxe toy, which I actually kind of want to get again to do some proper customizing on, but regardless, I thought that toy was really interesting. It definitely had its problems, but I thought it was cool, thought it was interesting, but sold it off. Haven't touched it since. Then I saw that this was coming out, and I was like, that looks pretty cool, I'm gonna get it, even though it looks like a barricade retool. This is not a barricade retool, that is for sure, but yeah, I actually really like this figure. So let's just get into it. As you can see, he's got his weapon on his back. Just to show you that it goes there, there's these little pegs on the side of the gun, and these little notches next to the, I guess they're exhaust, but it looks like that's where the license, well, I guess the license plate would go up there, but yeah, there's those little notches there, so that just plugs in like so. And that's how you store the weapon in vehicle mode, and it looks really not great. I mean, it stays out of the way, but it's just blah. So we're just gonna take that off and put it off to the side, but that is that, and we will definitely be seeing more of this when we get to robot mode. As for the vehicle, I like this vehicle mode. It's kind of like a weird concept car. Like the different contour lines, the way that these bits kind of flare out at the back, the lines going along here and down through the hood, like it all just kind of makes it look more like a not quite finished being designed vehicle, which I actually think is cool. Bit of trivia about me, I went to a school that was predominantly for automotive design. I wasn't part of the automotive design program, but both of my roommates were. And this just kind of makes me think of that, because I got to see a lot of concept car sketches in the 4 years I was at that school, so it kind of, I don't know, makes me a little nostalgic for it. But yes, this kind of looks like a concept car, which is, from what I understand, made to look a bit like an Audi, and it's not actually an Audi because Audi would not give Hasbro the license. But it's interesting, and also the breakup of the color is interesting, because there is a lot of silver on here, but there's also a lot of unpainted plastic, but they did the pattern in an interesting way, where you've got this unpainted streak going up along the center of the car, but then you also have these details that are painted in. You've got silver going along the sides, but then you've got these sections that are intentionally left unpainted. You've got unpainted, I think this is unpainted, or maybe it is painted, details in the front, but like the silver bumps up the contrast, which is really nice. And then around the back, you've got all this really nice silver, and then the red for the taillights. And I don't know, like aside from here and here, on either side of the vehicle, I feel like they did a really good job of kind of distributing the silver paint without painting the entire thing. It kind of makes it look like a more intentional paint job and not just, oh, we didn't have the budget to paint these bits, or we could paint these bits because of the plastic used or something like that. So, it looks cool. The problem with this is they didn't do anything with the rims, which it's not a huge deal, but it does kind of bug me in this instance because the rear wheels are pinned and the front wheels are on clips, so they look a bit different. I mean, you can see based on the shape here, they're supposed to have the same kind of style, but the molding is different because of the way that they're fixed, and that's just kind of a bummer. I'm kind of thinking I may go in and paint the rims on both sides silver so that it masks the difference a little bit better, but we'll see what happens. I will also say this is one of those very rare occasions where I'm not mad about the translucent plastic that they used for the windows, because one, they did it for all of the windows. like the windshield, the side windows, including the tiny back side windows, and the rear window, the full section of the rear window. So like they did translucent plastic all the way around, but it's also a darker tinted translucent plastic. So you can kind of see into the car, but not really. So it doesn't do that thing that I hate where you just get this really clear picture of a bunch of folded up robot bits. As for folded up robot bits, you can see those on the underside, though for the most part, it hides it relatively well. It is kind of funny, though, how he's just got hands gripping over what would be his hips in in robot mode. So it's an interesting transformation on this guy, I will say that much. But yeah, I like this car mode. It's pretty cool. It rolls pretty darn well. And it looks neat. So let's get things readjusted here so we can talk about how big this thing is. And it's a Studio Series Deluxe from the live action movie, so don't expect anything outstanding in terms of size. Here you can see how big Sideways is when it comes to being a deluxe, and he is smaller than an average deluxe. This is true. Doesn't really bother me because I feel like this is kind of the norm, especially for the live action movie figures, but it is something. I kind of feel like, at least in the case of Sideways, they may have made up for the size difference through either the parts count or the paint or both, because this guy does come off as really well done. I mean, okay, we'll see more when we get to the robot mode. Like, most of the paint that this figure has is in the car mode, but because of the way that he's engineered, most of the paint that you see in robot mode is like, there's a lot of car on display in robot mode, so the lack of paint for a lot of the revealed robot mode bits isn't really a problem. So I don't know, I feel like maybe the engineering and or paint is part of why they were able to do this guy as well as they did, even though he's a little bit smaller. That is 100% speculation on my part, so I could be completely wrong on that front, but that's just kind of the impression that I get. But anyway, here is Sideways with a bit more of a fair comparison, I think. That is a Studio Series Brawn from the Bumblebee movie, and you can see that they're roughly the same size. Brawn's dimensions, he's not quite as wide, not quite as long, but he sits a bit higher. So I feel like they're, mass-wise at least, roughly equivalent. And Brawn is not huge in terms of deluxes either, but Brawn is still really awesome. So, don't really bother me. I legitimately feel like once they kind of hit their stride with Studio Series, things just got better and better. So yeah, even though things are a little bit smaller in some cases, they're still really cool figures. Alright, let us turn Sideways into a robot that I believe was never actually shown in the movies because he died while he was a car. But transformation on this guy is really interesting. He also does that thing that I really love when you first get a figure and, like, if you're not looking at the instructions or whatever, or if the instructions aren't complete or done well, where, like, you get the figure, you're messing around with it and everything's cool, but then you find little extra bits that you can do that, like, just slightly improve the look of the robot mode or add a little bit more functionality that you may not have realized was there initially. And this guy does that, especially in the chest, which is really cool. Anyway, to start, we're going to pull the back up a little bit because it pegs into these bits here. So just pull that up a little bit. Now I try to pull this down. I might need to open up the fingers a little bit down here just to get a little bit more clearance. But pull it down, and this should, there we go. So this will unpeg from here, and this actually came unpegged too, but yeah, this pegs into up here. And then on this side, gonna do the same thing, and pull out and down. Let's bring that down and unpeg this. And with these two things unpegged, we can fold this up to get that out of the way. And actually, I'm gonna fold it up at this spot here. This actually has that extra hinge, so fold that up, and I'll just leave that as is for now. So now that we've got this going on, I'm gonna rotate this out a little bit so we can grab this piece and pull that out. Over here, rotate it out so we can pull that out. And now we can move these bits up and out of the way. I'm going to get this whole chunk that was hidden by most of the car. We're going to move this out of the way. Just rotate it right up here. That gives us more room up here because now we need to get the arms out. And to get the arms out, I'm going to kind of rotate this out of the way so that we can bend this in a little bit and start pulling up. And there's a, I'll show you when we extend it. Basically, there's a double hinge here, and one of those hinges is ratcheted. So you kind of want to carefully angle things out so that you can get that hinge out. And there you can see there's this bit on the inside moves freely, and then this bit is ratcheted. So that kind of helps to get that out. And you can also see how it's compacted up here. So move that out of the way and just keep that out of the way for now. Now here, again, I'm going to rotate it and try and carefully pull it out and get that ratchet going. The ratchet is pretty stiff, and it's not like a huge problem or anything like that. It's just if you're not careful, you might pop the shoulder off the ball joint, which is just a little annoying. It's not a big problem, but that, and make sure it's straight. There we go. Now we've got two almost finished arms. We might as well finish the arms while we're here. So we move the thumb in a little bit, and now this wheel section will accordion in on a double hinge here. So hinge that in and like that, and that compacts the arm in. I'll do the same thing here. Bring that in, get the thumb in a better position. And okay, now the arms are done. Well, almost done. And next, okay, I find it's easy to push here because this little section here is a separate hinge. So you can push from the bottom to pop that open and just fold that back. And now this whole assembly, I shouldn't have brought that up all the way. I need to get these past here first. So there we go. So I just brought this down a little bit and bring it back up. So that gets all of this out of the way. And now that we've got the room here, we can do the lower body, which is really easy. The feet peg together up here, so just want to unpeg those. And then the knees or lower legs peg into the sides of the torso right here. So I want to pop those out and then rotate them down. And then again, just pop it out from there and rotate it down. You can go forward or backward. It's a little bit easier to crash into stuff if you go forward, but it still works. And then straighten out the legs and feet. Now this whole weirdness is going on. So with all of that done, can bring this down a bit, bring this up a bit, and this whole section will hinge and tuck into torso. Then this will come down, and there's a notch here right in front of the head and a tab here. So we bring that down, that goes into that tab to help solidify the upper body. Next, I'm going to take the back section here and accordion it up, and this also moves in, and then there are tabs up here that tab in across this bit here. So that helps to kind of solidify the backpack. Now gonna angle back these little window bits, angle forward these side pieces. And now this is one of the things that I missed initially that's really cool. When you raise this the inner joint here, not the ratcheted one, but the inner joint for the shoulder, it actually will soft lock in place. So when you rotate this up, bring this up all the way, and it'll click kind of. And once it's clicked in place, like it's not gonna move out of that position pretty easily. And that helps to keep this piece angled. And that's really cool. It both helps to add a little bit of extra dynamic look to the robot mode and also keeps parts from moving when you don't want them to. I really like that. I'm gonna fold this back so that it's just cleaned up along the back. And lastly, these little bits in front. There's two pieces that are both on rotational hinges. You just bring them forward, and they kind of meet in the middle, and that gives him this weird little transformation bit in the stomach area, and that's it. There we've got Studio Series 88 Sideways in his robot mode, and this is actually really cool. I really like this. He's a bit stout compared to what his earlier original, I guess, Movie Deluxe toy was, but I'm into this a lot. I really, really like this robot mode. It just looks weird but neat. And I feel like here you can kind of see where I made the mistake of originally thinking that this was like a Barricade retool, because he does have a similar arm setup to Barricade, and his feet do look a bit like Barricade's feet. But he does have like the wheels in the wrists and then the big grabby fingers. So it is a bit reminiscent of Barricade, but this, as I said, definitely not just a rehash of Barricade. There's a lot of difference here. I really, really like how the whole thing comes together, and I love how the shape of the front of the car folds down around the center, and then these bits fold in. It's just such a cool design and transformation that really keeps the details of the initial car mode, but does interesting stuff with them. Makes it look a little bit more dynamic, you know? You know, there is some hollowness, like in the insides of the legs and stuff. I feel like this is fine, given the design of this guy. It doesn't bother me at all. Like, and also, because of the way this thing transforms, this whole section kind of tucks up around the center mass of the torso. So it's, you know, I think it's forgivable for what it is. Maybe they could have made the section inside the torso a little bit slimmer so that they could bulk out the legs a little bit more, but like, really, when I'm looking at this guy, I'm not looking at his thin shins or calves. I'm looking at this bulked out torso and chunky arms. So this doesn't bother me. And as for like the rest of the body with the hollowness and stuff, like you could argue there's some hollowness on the backs of the arms and the insides and the backs of the forearms, but like it's around back. I'm not really gonna see him from this angle that much, and when I do, my eye's not focused on this stuff. It's more focused on this. And incidentally, I really like how the way he transforms, like, yeah, a good portion of the top and back of the car just tuck away, but it tucks away really nicely. This is a really solid, clean backpack. Like it doesn't peg in up top here, but it pegs in solidly down here, and it sets in solidly in the center of the body. So like this is fine. Like it's not floppy. It's not, you know, moving around like the original Deluxe sometimes had a tendency to do. And it looks clean. It just kind of gives him a hunchback, but that works in his favor because he's already kind of a monstrous looking robot. Now, as for the overall detailing itself, as I mentioned, he has very Barricade looking feet, but what's cool is, as I said before, most of the paint detailing went into the vehicle mode, but they did still put some paint in the robot mode, which really helps to set everything off. Like you get a little bit of silver in the knees and the hips, and then also a little bit of silver in the forearms. So yeah, he's not like completely silver. He could absolutely do with a bit more in terms of silver paint and whatnot, but like what's here, I think, breaks everything up pretty well. Like it doesn't look like you've got an unpainted robot. It looks like a robot with a bunch of silver accents all over, some of which is from the original vehicle mode. I just think that's really cool. Also, for some reason, I just really like the little bits that fold out on his arms. When he comes in the package, they're folded in like that, and that's fine, but folding them out just adds a little bit more, I guess, aggressiveness to his silhouette and kind of further emphasizes the weirdness of his design. This is just a really cool, weird robot design that I'm totally smitten with. I think, honestly, I believe this is a better, at least for me, this is a better design than his original toy. I do still want the original toy again. I think it'd be fun to do a custom on, and I think it's got its own merits. But this is better, as far as I'm concerned. Now that head is, I don't know how accurate it is to Revenge of the Fallen Sideways, but it is a very live-action Bayverse Decepticon head. It's very angular and a little bit like Barricade, just in the sense that like it's got the spiky bits going up the top and like a similar kind of crown design. But it's not Barricade's head; it just is similar. But it is monstrous, and it is neat. Did they paint the eyes? I can't tell if they painted the eyes. Maybe they did. Okay, I put Sideways' face directly in a light, and it's really hard to see, but there's a tiny, tiny bit of red that they dotted on the eyes there, which is really pretty neat. But yeah, it's an ugly head sculpt, but like that's the point. And I think for what it is, it worked out really well. They did do that weird thing where the back of the head is translucent plastic, but he doesn't have light piping, so I don't know why they felt the need to make it translucent, but hey, whatever. Now we've taken a look at his head made of knives. The articulation on this figure is actually pretty cool. He's got a ball-jointed head, as you saw, which doesn't afford any side-to-side tilt, but can look up and down, mostly just up, and it can rotate. So you can get a little expressive with the head, even though it's a bit limited. The shoulders are on ball joints, so you can rotate up and around. You can do some butterfly motion as well, and depending on the motion of the butterfly, that also can adjust like how much you can bring the arms down. So you've got some weird shoulder articulation, but you can do that. Also, you can use the ratcheted shoulder joint. So if you wanted to bring the shoulder down, that was not the ratcheted joint. If you wanted to bring the shoulder down, you could do it that way, like ratchet that down to bring it down a little bit more and have it rest a little bit more, I guess, naturally. Personally, I prefer to have it up when it's straightened, so that brings the arms out, kind of emphasizes the monstrousness, but you got options. And the elbows are ball jointed, which means you get both the bend, which is slightly more than 90 degrees, and also forearm rotation, which works as a bicep rotation, so that's nice. The fingers are also closable. You can open and close the three fingers here can open and close. It's not necessary for the transformation, but you can close them in all the way, and then the thumb can also open and close quite a bit. And moving these out of the way. With all of that, you actually do get a waist rotation. It goes all the way around, all the junk on the back and the front stays out of the way. It's a really nice, clear waist rotation. The thighs are on a ball joint, so you can get some pretty decent thigh rotation just from the ball joint, and then you can also go forward if you angle it out, because of all the stuff crashing in there. If you angle it out, you can go forward about 90, go back pretty much 90, you can go out 90. But he also does have a dedicated thigh swivel just above the knee, so lots of rotational range on the legs. And then the knees can go 90 degrees back, but they can also swing forward. So if you wanted to, you could angle them forward and give him a shorter profile, but also more of like a chicken leg kind of thing, which further emphasizes the monstrousness. And I think that's a cool option. Personally, I prefer to have them stretched out a little bit just to make him a little bit taller, but that is not bad. And then the feet are on ball joints, but due to the way that everything is lined up, you're really not going to get much in the way of ankle tilt. You get like very, very slight amounts of tilt. You do get rotation, and then you get the forward and backward motion, which is for the transformation, really. But you do get that. And I should also mention, I had to tighten the ball joints on the ankles for Sideways, for my Sideways, because they weren't like ragdoll loose. He was able to stand and hold poses, but they were kind of annoyingly loose. So I ended up just taking it upon myself to tighten those up so I wouldn't have to worry about him falling over. Yeah, this is such a cool looking Sideways. I really like this toy. It looks neat, the transformation is interesting, and the deco is great. And we haven't even talked about his gun yet. And his gun is weirdly reminiscent of one of the guns from Fall of Cybertron, sure. And the way that this attaches is unorthodox, we'll say. You can do left or right hand. I have been doing the left hand just for no reason in particular, so this is just a choice, but you can do the right hand as well. What you do is you open up the hand, and there's this little kind of tab section right up here, and there's a little slot in the palm. So you bring this in, and this tabs in there, and when that's tabbed in, that more or less keeps the gun in place, and then you bring the thumb in, and there's a little notch carved into the knuckle of the thumb that goes over this tab here. So you bring that in, and when that goes over it, that really locks the gun in place, so that gun is not going to fall out. And that basically makes it look like his hand has transformed into a gun, and that's cool. I like that look. It's unnecessary. I feel like this guy could, he looks like he could rip something apart with just his fingers, but I like that. And then if you wanted to not have him holding the gun, you could unpeg it. Getting that thumb undone is a little bit tricky, but there you go. So you could take the gun out of his hand and instead just peg it in where it was on the car, because those two slots are still readily available. So you can just bring this in and peg it into his back, and that stores his gun in robot mode, so you don't have to worry about losing it, but it'll still keep his hands free. So that gives you that option. And real quick, I'm gonna bring Braun in here just for a second. We'll bring him back in a minute after this, but you may notice there is a peg on this gun. This peg is not used for sideways at all. I could not find a spot for it. Doesn't seem to be any way to use this peg in conjunction with this guy. But what you can do is, this is a 5mm peg, so you can peg it into a different figure's hand, and then they can just hold the gun like a regular gun. So you could do that. I appreciate that they have that option in there. So yeah, Studio Series Sideways is pretty freaking cool. He is, as one might expect, he is a bit on the short side because he is a Studio Series live-action movie deluxe, which I'm not going to hold against him, but, well, you'll see. Putting him next to some mainline contemporaries in various classes, you can see that he is, even with his legs fully extended and not doing the compressed digitigrade thing, he is shorter than an average deluxe. It's not a huge problem for me, but he is about a head shorter. At the same time, while he's not as dense and tall as Downshift, he is more intricate. He's got way more moving parts, and he's got, I don't know if I could arguably say more or less paint. I feel it's roughly comparable, but like, he's got more articulation, he's got more moving parts. So I feel like, yeah, he's a head shorter, but it's fine. Plus, live-action Studio Series Carbot, they tend to be on the shorter side. And here he is with Braun, and you can see that he's small, he's spindly, but he is taller than Braun, at least when his legs are fully extended. I want to say he's maybe like half a head taller. The wings on the back obviously add more to his height, but I'm really just going by head and possibly hunchback. I feel like he kind of falls somewhere in between that height where it's like he's not as small as the smaller ones, but he's not as tall as some of the taller ones. So I feel like for what he is, he's a respectable height, if that makes any sense. And it may sound like I'm making excuses, I don't know, but honestly, I don't care, because this figure is awesome. And if it was a little bit bigger, that'd be fine. If it had a little bit more paint, that'd be cool. But like, for what we get, I'm really into this. And that is gonna do it for Studio Series 88 Sideways. Can you tell I really like this guy? I really, really like the look. I like the transformation. I saw that like some people have issues with the transformation, and that's fair. Me personally, I'm very much into it. I think it does some really interesting and weird things, like how the legs fold up around the head, and all of that mass just kind of tucks inside the car shell. But the car shell is made up of the torso and the arms, with a little bit of the backpack and the wings. But like the wings are supposed to be there, so I feel like he accomplishes a lot. And he just looks cool. It's very cool and very posable. Really, the only thing I would want if they did like some kind of bigger re-engineered KO of this is like maybe if they filled in the hollowness in like the inner legs and the backs of the arms and then added more paint. That's really all I think I could nitpick about this guy. But even if that never happens, I'm very content with this. Like, I'm not a sideways fanboy per se, but for some reason I just really like the design of the robot. I don't know, it just does really cool things with that design. So yeah, if you are thinking about this guy, absolutely get him. He is cool. But that's enough about what I think. What do you all think of Studio Series 88 Sideways? Whatever your thoughts, feel free to chime in down below. I always enjoy hearing from you all. Thank you everybody for watching, and remember, it's toys. Toys are fun. So let's just have fun.